Hello everyone, welcome to the Soul City Institute for Social Justice's very special limited series on the Maputo Protocol, where we discuss feminist Africa and how we go towards it. My name is Sponsor Pilane. I'm the Communications and Advocacy Manager at Soul City, and I'm joined by our incredible CEO, who's also the co-host of this limited series. We will be taking you through what the Maputo Protocol is, how it impacts us as women, girls, and gender non-conforming people in Africa, and how we can work towards a feminist Africa as envisioned in this incredible legal framework. But we can't do it alone. And we want you at home to tell us what you know about the Maputo Protocol, what you think it is, and if you even know where to start in understanding it. This limited series will come as a form of a podcast. We'll have 5 audio episodes where we have incredible guests with us who will be discussing and unpacking the protocol with us. And for now, you can like us on Facebook, on our Facebook page, on our Instagram. You can follow us as well as on Twitter, or whether we call it X now, or to be honest, if it will be next week. But for now, Fina, we're here, finally.
We are here. And greetings to everyone who's joining us, and thank you for allowing us to have this conversation with you. And to the young people joining us, thank you very much. As an organization, we believe in the empowerment of young women. We believe in young women being given a platform to speak because they have a voice. Ours is just to amplify, and create space for that voice to be heard. So thank you for joining us, and I hope when you introduce yourself, you tell people the lovely work that you do as young feminists.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. This marks 20 years since the Maputo Protocol has been ratified or has been in existence, In 2003, we saw the protocol come, and we are sitting here now. Just 2 weeks ago, on the 11th of July, we were celebrating the 20th anniversary of the protocol. It's such an important policy, and it was such a progressive moment for Africa. But we're sitting here with a progressive, legally binding document on women's rights and, most importantly, human rights. But under the protocol, African states acknowledge the crucial role that women and girls play in dismantling systems that have caused inequity and inequality.
Yes.
But what is this protocol?
Yeah.
We are talking about the protocol.
Yeah.
What is the Maputo Protocol, Fina?
So you've touched on when it was actually, signed in, but it's actually the protocol, and I'm reading it because I don't want to miss any words. Protocol to the African Charter on the Rights of Women in Africa, which was adopted by head of states in Mozambique, in Maputo, hence the Maputo Protocol. And it's one of the highly ratified documents, right? Because 49 states have signed it, and of the 49, 43 have actually ratified. And ratification is when they say we will be bound by the protocol as a state. And South Africa is one of the signatories, interestingly, of this protocol. So I'm sure as we conversate, we'll check whether it's actually, living by the standards
definitely
of the protocol. And it's interesting that it's also one of the first treaties to recognize abortion as a human right. And we are struggling with abortion provision in South Africa. We are struggling with women being given a platform just to bodily autonomy, just to exercise their bodily autonomy and to have rights, to say, what do I want to do with my body, with whom, when, and how, right? We're still struggling with those issues. And it's the protocol itself is meant to strengthen women's rights. And I'm sure you'll talk to us about singling out women versus human rights, because are we not human?
Yeah.
It's like when you say women, human, there's two groups. There's humans and there's women, but we are human. And I want us to maybe go to that conversation, you know, what it means to you, and please start with introducing yourself.
Okay.
And then tell us why this singling out of women versus human rights.
Okay, hi everyone. I am Gugulethu Sihlali. I'm a sexual and reproductive health rights advocate, and a lot of my work is done on a higher level, so in academic spaces and just speaking. But I think, so it's such an important nuance that we disregard. Like, why is it a human rights document specifically for women? And it's little things like that that make normative culture of looking at women as objects, or looking at women as people who are normatively violated in said societies. And I think once we understand those nuances, we understand why it's important to have policies like this. Yes, maybe the framing of the policy is a bit weird, like human rights versus women. But it's very important to have these things because despite women being objects and being the marginalized in said society, they're very important and play very crucial roles. So let's get into sort of the humanity, right? I think the reason why they have to go the step further to specifically say women and girls is that what makes us objects is the removing of our humanity. So we no longer exist in said societies as human beings anymore, but we exist as objects to patriarchy. We exist as objects to productivity, so that is your capitalism. We exist as objects to everything, to motherhood, to just merely existing. So it does become important for the maintenance of patriarchy, for there to be a direct segregation of our humanity towards our womanhood. But on a second level of nuance, if we look at it properly, our womanhood is not humane, right? Because when men have to start looking at us as human beings, there's a problem, right? So if a man has to start looking at a woman as a human being, then there's equalities. So what would I do if I was in this situation? How would I handle this violence? And it makes them deeply uncomfortable. And that's why they have to remove us of our humanity, so that we're not equal to them. And so that when the violence does exist for us, it is justified and there are nuances around it. Yes. And that's why it's important for us to speak about policies like this today, because our lives are really we're in danger. Yeah. You know, I went to the police station yesterday to go certify documents, and it was 5 p.m, the sun was about to set, and I was scared, you know, and a police station is a very important part of the justice system, but I was really scared to go because, one, predominantly policemen are male. So there's those very many nuances and why it's important for us to look at that segregation, particularly for this policy.
I like what you're talking about when you talk about the differentiation between us and human rights, right? But I'd like to take it a step back and even reflect on the fact that the Maputo Protocol is seen as this legal framework that says human rights because people, you know, women, gender non-conforming people, non-binary people should be treated with the dignity of their human rights being respected, regardless of their gender, the status, the age, race, opinion, or whatever else that may differ you from the next person. And this is a very important part. And it's also important to acknowledge that women and girls are impacted by those identities in a very specific way. Makosomvelo, you are part of our Feminist Leadership and Activism Center, and you're part of the first group of incredible young women and gender non-conforming people that have to grapple with being feminists as young people. What does the Maputo Protocol mean to you, and what does it mean to you as a young feminist?
Good day. My name is Makosomvelo Mthembu. I am a FLAG fellow, and to me and all those 20 young girls, it means, the Maputo Protocol means we have rights and we are considered. And what you're saying, Kuku, about women's rights versus human rights, I think it's equity in that, just to balance things, because I think we've been patriarchy has had a lot of toll in women's abilities to do things. So this was to just equalize things in terms of acknowledging that also women can, and also women have rights. Yes.
Interestingly, I saw when we posted, about this conversation, so we had put a feminist Africa, right? Because Maputo Protocol speaks about advancing African women's rights, so it's specific.
Yes.
Because we have women all over the world, but this one is specific to African women. And because of our feminist identity as an organization, we have said, a feminist Africa. And somebody sort of put Africa, feminism, and emojis laughing. Meaning to them, they don't see Africa moving towards, or maybe they feel that Africa should not move towards feminist values, feminist principles, and we know that we have, while Maputo Protocol is progressive, we still have harmful practices.
Yep.
Ukutwala is still a thing in 2023.
Female
genital mutilation is still a big thing, on the continent. What are your thoughts around Africa and where we are as Africa, given what Maputo Protocol is promoting, promotion of human rights, removing all forms of discrimination against women and girls, and you just spoke also about women's, positionality, right, against patriarchy, and how as African women, we feel justified to demand that we are recognized as human beings, and that we are not objectified, but there's still a pushback. A lot of pushback, because when I read that comment, I saw pushback, and I saw patriarchy coming full force to say, here you go with your Western ideologies destroying our culture. Do you feel demanding our rights as women, African women, is going against culture? Is culture about abusing women and not affording us our right to exist?
And I would just like to add on that, Makasam I would like to start, it's a big topic in her, and I'll let her explain, even her project for the Feminist Leadership Academy, Activism Center, is centered around culture. Can you just give us a background on why culture is such an important part of, or how your life as a young African feminist intersects with culture? And why specifically Fina's question, is because I saw you light up as you hearing the question.
So, if I may explain, it is very contradicting to me as a young Zulu Median girl. So I attend Umhlanga every year and all of that, and it's very contradicting. So Umhlanga is going to a reed dance every year, KwaNongoma, KwaZulu Natal. So it is to celebrate our womanhood. We go for virginity testing, and we celebrate being cultural young girls. So it is very contradicting. At first I was contradicted when it comes to me celebrating that and identifying with feminism, because it is not feminist that's what a lot of people say, I guess. And I was very confused at first, but I just concluded with saying what you're saying to me. I think you said feminism is a conviction of your beliefs, and I took that to say, but in my belief, feminism is about empowering people. It is about equality. It is about embracing oneself, everyone for that matter. So I think finding a balance when it comes to the terms and just being empowered as you are and not being contradicted to say, okay, so I understand a lot of times people tend to say, oh,
yes.
Okay.
They say a lot of things.
They say a lot of things that contradicts with my beliefs.
Yes.
And in a feminist space, a lot of things that you say is, we need to change the cultural beliefs. We need to get rid of cultural norms. And I understand that there are a lot of things that we need to unlearn. but I also think that you should
The two
be
must meet each other.
considerate. And yeah, they might not to completely cancel or like, but you must try to engage as I'm trying to do with my project, trying to educate these young girls about SRHR in a way that, okay, you are a virgin now and you are testing and all of that, but when you reach womanhood and when you start engaging in sexual intercourse, this and this and this is what you can do. In that
It's talking
sense.
about not taking away your agents.
Yes.
Because you still have agents.
I
As
agree.
much as, in feminism we promote, young people knowing their rights, they have responsibilities, and part of the responsibility is you making decisions about your own body,
It is.
where you want to go and what you want to believe in. And I think we live in the world of contradictions.
We do.
My life on its own is a contradiction. So many things
Everyone's
contradict
life, yeah.
each other, but I navigate that space with an understanding of who I am and what I respond to as a person, but also knowing that once it reaches this, where I get uncomfortable with the next person's engagement with me, and where I feel, but now you're stepping, in my space, whether it's a man or it's a woman, mostly it's men who step negatively in my space, it's like, now it's no longer comfortable. And being able to say, look, now it's not comfortable and I don't want it. Having that right to say, I don't want, for me, it's like an achievement. But I'm interested to hear from you.
Yes,
around
I wanted
culture
to
and
add.
tradition.
So I disagree with the contradiction, and I think so. When you understand feminism from an activist perspective and from an academic perspective, you start to understand the differences. So from an activist perspective, that feminism is very much rooted in lived experiences, in the human being themselves, and so there's no sort of objectivity in that feminism. But from an academic perspective, I was very shocked in my first feminist theory class to know that radical feminism is not like burning buildings. It's about dealing with things from the root cause. So when we look at feminism, looking at institutions and systems, that's what we mean by radical. And so I think when we speak about culture, and I'm going to contact you because I really want to do my PhD in speaking about how feminism and culture should coexist, right? I think the two can coexist. Like you were speaking about personal agency, the feminist movement is about encouraging and sort of pushing people towards being personally agent. So can I make choices for myself? Am I empowered enough to make this decision? So with regards to sexual and reproductive health rights, do I know how to apply a condom? Do I know what it means to not have sex without a condom? And that's the basis of the feminist movement. So in terms of culture, if girls are going Wamhlanga, they should still be able to go even if they don't want their virginity to be tested. Because virginity is not that important for everyone. Right? So it's those nuances of I want this, and it's very important because we identify with things, and that's how we build our choices in life. So taking away culture from people is a very bad thing, and ultimately it creates a lot more problems. So how do we make sure that people are still able to have identifiers while still being empowered? So can I still go Gamhlanga and still understand sexual and reproductive health rights? Can I still go Gamhlanga and still understand the repercussions of patriarchy and how when we go to these reed dances, these men might just be vultures? It's those sort of nuances. There's nothing wrong with the culture. It's beautiful. I believe in the girls being dressed and dancing and singing. It's so beautiful, and it allows little girls to stay away from men a little longer, which I advocate for deeply, because we give them an opportunity to be empowered. But are these nuances meeting each other at a compromise? This is what my culture is saying. This is what is the reality. How are we merging the two to coexist so that we can build personal agencies in these kids, in these young women, and in these adults?
And maybe how we are so vocal about virginity and wanting young women to keep their virginity in a society where rape culture
is so
big, and we don't talk against rape culture, but we speak against young girls who have lost their virginity, and we don't even care.
Lost,
right? In inverted commas, right? And without even caring enough to follow up how
that virginity was lost.
was
I mean, even
lost.
in the language of lost, it's a violation
Of
for
course.
somebody to say that you've lost your virginity. Nobody can take away something that I haven't given them.
Exactly.
And at a point that I've lost something, it's been taken away from me very violently.
Yeah.
So even the language that we've normalized is very violent in just normal life. Like, how am I losing my virginity? Or how is he taking my virginity away from me? You know, those sort of things play a role in everything.
That's true. And you know, linking it back, it's these cultural lived experiences, these everyday situations that really enable us to see what or that enable us to look at the Maputo Protocol through the lenses of our experiences, the things that we value, right? But we must remember as well, just going back to the protocol, that there are different states, member states, that have signed and ones that have ratified. The 42 that have ratified have been able to implement the protocol by different laws, policies, and we see action towards a better Africa. But there are limitations, you know. We are still sitting here with the worry of walking to a police station
At 5
p.m.
not
you know,
10 p.m. 5
even at 10 p.m. right? That a police station is not somewhere where you feel safe. We are still here where you are living Makhosamvelo with contradictions about two things that are deeply meaningful to you and important. What are the gaps that exist in the protocol? You know, when I look at it, the gaps are not in the protocol itself, and the gaps are in its implementation. You know, the AU, which is the custodians of the protocol, turned 20 last year. So, you know, the development of the protocol and the age of the AU are so close and we're sitting here thinking about a feminist Africa. What are the ways in which you think perhaps that the protocol lacks? For me, it's in the implementation. For you, Makhosamvelo, Fina, Gugu?
For me, I think the protocol is not gender neutral, in the sense that it does not specifically talks about laws that accommodate queer people. So yes, but in South Africa, I think we are very progressive in a sense that we have laws that support the protocol, but the implementation, as you say, is not there. Yeah.
So I believe the institutions must burn, and I giggle because I went to a speaking gig 2 weeks back and everyone said, "Excuse me, why do you want the systems to burn?" But I think we have these very progressive policies that are coming into rotten institutions. So the people in these spaces are running these policies. The ways in which we are implementing these things are ruined because of monitoring and evaluation and how things are put in place, you know. So I do think that we do have an issue of institutions and system that exist that are deeply rooted in patriarchy, and the only way to allow for these progressive policies that we have to be able to flourish is if we really do get rid of these institutions. I'm not going to say the word burn, we don't want to cause controversy, but we need to get rid of these institutions and start all over again. For instance, abortion laws exist, but people are still struggling to get access to abortion. There's still issues of stigma when they get into these clinics, you know. So all of these things, they go back to narrative work at its root, because if we haven't changed the narrative, then we still have an issue. And then they also go back a little bit to leaving the boy child behind. So a lot of the solutions we have are very much, I would say, problematic and are burdensome on the girl child. So boy children or men are raping these kids and they must go to school. And boy children are beating them and they must go to school and they must get an education and they must work. But we're not changing the narrative within these kids, or the boy children that is now. So we have an empowered girl child that is progressing and is going up. And we still have a boy child who's still progressed because they still retained their power, but still has the same narrative as before. So now there's a greater pushback because these people didn't work back in the days, or it's not a norm that they work. Now what does it mean for this person to work in a normative culture that is not a norm?
Yeah.
You know? So we have women who are breadwinners but are being beaten by their husbands because they're not understanding this dynamic. We also have women who aren't working and being supported by their husbands but are also being beaten because we haven't dealt with the narrative, and at the core of everything these things still exist.
Wow.
So Maputo Protocol, superb, you know, and very progressive, and it's allowed for a lot of other policies and legislations to come about, but bringing these into rotten institutions is just a bit of a clash.
Yeah, and I mean the aspirations within the protocol are great. You know, imagine the world if we had fulfilled, you know, what the Maputo Protocol set out to achieve. We wouldn't be sitting here where you are scared to go to a police station at 5, where every day when my daughter steps out, I wonder, you know, is she safe where she is? You need to call every 30 minutes. Oh, Sharp, where are you?
Send a live
to send a live
Yes.
location. You know, when you are in an Uber, you need to make sure 3 or 4 people are following your trip just to make sure you get home safe, right? And the protocol itself, because we also want to educate around what it says, guarantees girls and women right to life, integrity, security of the person, right? And it calls on states to take accountability.
Yes.
And I think accountability is what we lack, because you were saying what are the gaps. So one of the gaps that I see is accountability. It's relatable. The protocol is relatable. It speaks to our real life, you know, our real lives, our lived experiences. But the people who are now supposed, the institutions that are supposed to uphold the standards in the protocol are failing, and they are not holding themselves accountable. And maybe we, as citizens, we're also not holding them accountable enough. You know, we lack somewhere in really getting them to account. We make noise, and sometimes it dies down quickly. We move on, and then we remember, we make noise again, and then it dies down. It's like, it's a cycle, a vicious cycle of, and then, you know.
I'd like to get to some of the comments that we're having on the live. You know, Karabo Lififi was just giving us a comment on how she always wanted to know how feminism and culture relate. You know, and this is something that we talked about. We all are unapologetically African feminists. I say that with pride. You know, we have also another comment, and as I'm just going through the comments, thank you so much to all people who are engaging us on our social media platforms. Please remember to follow us on Twitter or X. Please follow us on Instagram, and also engage with our content on Facebook Live. We're at Soul City Institute. We have other participants here on the chat. Aziza Ran very much saying that they are really supporting what you said, Gugu, around progressive policies, and I think also what we're all just nodding to, that the implementation, the truth is that that is why a lot of things are stalling. We do not have the political will that from our leaders and the governments that we have instilled. And I think we can even take it to the level of the AU that is the custodians of that. And another, sorry, just quickly, just another comment from Balisa as well, saying that why is it only, and I think this is a question we need to engage in, you know, as unapologetic African feminists. Why is it important for the policy and the protocol to only focus on African women?
I think, sorry, I just wanted to speak, I had forgotten, I wanted to mention this earlier. The AU's issue is legitimacy. So I elaborate very deeply on a legitimacy theory now. So for instance, we're more likely to buy in from ICC policies because of the legitimacy of it, the power that they have, sort of how they move, who backs them. Whereas the AU, despite them existing for 20 years, doesn't have the backing of very legitimate organizations. And so that's what makes it difficult sort of for buy-in, for instance, or even to take it seriously because of that sort of idea of legitimacy. But just to touch on the feminist one as well, there's two feminist theories that I think just speak to how feminist African feminism can exist. One, existential feminism. That's just for women to sort of figure out what's their existence and how, so if we speak about an existential feminist theory in an African context, there's no other way for us to speak of our existence either than from an African lens, right? But secondly, intersectionality theory. Yeah. Kimberly Crenshaw was a Black African American woman, and she coined the term, and it looks at the different intersecting discriminatory ideas that speak on race. For instance, we don't even have to go far since we're speaking about
gender,
sexuality. Yes, but if we're looking at it from an African feminist perspective, that looking at race takes us very deep enough for us to be able to analyze why it's important for different people. So on the scale of oppression, we would be at the bottom as a Black woman. And so it's very important for us to make time to speak about issues that affect Black women, especially in the African continent, because we're already so limited in resources. So what does that mean for a Black woman in an African context?
Why African women? And Makosenzile, I also want to ask you, why is it important for it to be gender neutral? And what do you really mean about, why is it important for queer people to be included in the policy? I think it goes hand in hand with Palisa's question on our Facebook around why African women, why can't we just talk about all women, all women matter, African women matter, and why was it important, to focus on African women?
So I think it is very important that queer people are included, in a sense that laws are very specific to accommodate their rights, so that we don't go back to being countries like Uganda and Nigeria, where queerness is, what's the word?
Queer people.
Criminalized, yes. So I feel that it's very important because we have to recognize that queer people also have rights and are also equal as everybody else in that sense. So our laws taking away that from them means they have to struggle and they have to suffer because they don't have laws that support their rights.
Africa has a history of colonization, right? So, with that painful history, in South Africa alone, if you leave Africa and just zoom in to South Africa, apartheid, the way it created hierarchy, where you have a white man, a white woman, a Black man, systems in between, culture and whatever, and then at the bottom you have a Black woman. It's only recently that the laws have been changed, around women being able to own land. But before, you would need your husband to apply to get a bank account. We were treated like children, or our mothers, because at least we are, we are enjoying the benefits of living in somewhere democratic state, and whether it's democratic enough is another story. But I think the advantage that we have now and focusing on African women is needed, because you can never undo what colonization did.
Yes.
And that is why they speak. I mean, when we were attending CSW at the opening, the UN Secretariat said it will take us 286 years to achieve equality. So you wonder why, how, but you then understand the effect of colonization, of apartheid, of many other things, that we're still struggling with, the issue of not accepting everyone, disability still being a big agenda issue that we are not addressing. We were at some conference place in Mpumalanga, and the first thing we saw was, this is not disability friendly.
Yeah.
Because where would a person in a wheelchair enter here? How we deny them access to spaces, you know, and we still are trying to push for inclusivity. So for me, singling out African women is not a problem. The problem is understanding where we are as African women and where we want to be, you know. So we should not even, I think we should even zoom in and extract individuals within that, so that we say a fact. And I know, you know, body shaming is a big thing. It might sound stupid, right? But as a fat woman, and I wear that label, you still are called many things. You still have spaces where people say, will you fit?
Desirability.
When you go to a taxi, they say SCC.
Wait for the quantum.
You understand how far we still have to go in just treating women. You don't hear them saying that to a man. But as a woman, people feel like they have a right to comment about your body. They have a right to say anything and everything to you, because that's where we are as women, at the bottom.
You know, you mentioned something, and I think it goes back to intersectionality, as we've been speaking. At Soul City, we are unapologetic about our feminist agenda. We identify as an intersectional feminist organization. It's an identity that we take seriously, and this is why we are so also very proud of some of the partners, just like UNFPA, Google, where you are on the youth advisory panel. We are really proud of our partners at Ford Foundation, who fund our Feminist Leadership and Activism Center. And this identity means so much to us, right? When we want, a lot of times people think Soul City, they think Sister Bettina, they think the drama series, and that's we were feminist before we even put the label feminist in it, because health, the rights to health, we've been talking about sexual reproductive health and rights, you know, the fact that we were founded on the ideal of making sure that mother to child transmission for HIV is something that is addressed, that women are full, as in like they have eaten enough and are nutritionally in a place to breastfeed. This is the reality, right, of African women, not just here in South Africa. Yet only 42 states have ratified. Is there a difference in, you know, we're talking about some of the ways in which there's lack and gaps, but are there differences in a country that has ratified the protocol and a country that hasn't?
The policies, the legislation in those countries, even the type of institutions that they would have would, you know, tell you whether they actually follow or even they take their ratification seriously. Because sometimes it's just about ticking a box and they leave it there. You know, they don't follow up. So if a country has ratified but the legislation is still very problematic, still very patriarchal, you know, you were saying banning. In Soul City we use the language dismantling, because we want to dismantle the system and its subsystems, you know, and the many layers that come with those subsystems, even at the the family level.
Yes.
Because the protocol should find translation in all the levels, including in the family, how we raise boy children and girl children. You know, how we are treated as womakoti. You know,
Don't get me started.
you see how everything problematizes the women and African women specifically. Because in other cultures, of course, we can unpack other cultures maybe as we do the series. But as an African woman, you cringe when you think about getting married, because of the expectation. Hukotisa. You know, we did a public PSA, where we reversed the roles. So you see somebody sitting there covered, or mani, you know, by holaya, right? And what is holaya in English?
Holaya, it's holaya. You know, some things that cannot be translated, but to make to the benefit of our listeners who might not be familiar, holaya is the process where a husband and a wife are set, or a bride and groom are set down to be told what are the normative ways to be married, right? This is your responsibilities as a wife, this is your responsibility as a husband, but reality is that this is just a way to tell women what to do.
Exactly.
Because, you know, you'll be told in our language, "Munna ke selepe wa adimisan." A man is an ex. He must go chop at every house, right? But a woman is not a broom that can be borrowed to the neighbor. Huh? You know, so khulaya is that.
So we did that, and it was interesting to see the response. You know, because when the person who was hidden in the plaquettes was uncovered, it was a man. You know, and the people were saying, hey, that will never happen. Why should it? And we were saying, if it's good for a woman, why is it not good for a man? And I think this is what we are trying to get to say, we want, with the, you know, what the principles established in the Maputo Protocol, to say what is good for the men should be good for the woman.
Yes.
You know, let's balance things, because our cultures evolve, but there are certain things that people don't want to change from, as much as culture has evolved so much. And when you look at the things that people are refusing to move away from, it's things that have to do with the control and power over women.
Yep. I mean, we could say so much, right? And I like going back to women's rights are human rights as an important statement, to say that our humanity must be valued, our humanity must be seen, and that essentially we shouldn't be in a place, for me, the goal and the ideal of a Maputo Protocol is for a Maputo Protocol not to exist. Right? We are in South Africa right now, lastly, as we wrap up, because we have this series that's coming up. We're going to have 4 more episodes where we really unpack this, but we wanted to set the tone in the direction that we're going. We wanted to be personal, and especially because the personal is political. So everyone at home, even after this conversation is over, send us your questions, send us your comments, tell us what it means to you, tell us what you think the protocol has excluded. We want to hear from you. And just one last reminder where to find us. You can find us on all social media platforms at Soul City Institute for Social Justice. But going back for a last round of our comments, and we are in South Africa right now. We have what political analysts are saying is going to be one of the most contested and fierce elections coming in 2022. You know, last year there were about 6 elections on the African continent. We saw our neighbors in Lesotho have a very contested and important election. Nigeria as well went to the polls. Senegal went to the polls last year. Zimbabwe is also going. Botswana, you know, we're talking elections, we're talking about the political participation of women. And in South Africa, we know that we have a lot of women politicians and women in important leadership positions within the government. Is that enough? What does political participation of women, and I want to go to both of you as young women, you know, do we have enough young women who are politically active, but also where their political activities and involvement is making a difference?
I would start by saying I feel it's unfair that we don't even know who's representing the youth in political spaces, and I think that's important to know, for us to know where we can go to for like representation in political spaces. And it's also unfair that even if there are laws and the Maputo Protocol and supporting women, but still there's a lot of patriarchal norms that are deep-seated in those spaces. We like, it is normalized. We all know that if you want to be a political person or in a political space, you have to sleep with who and who and who so that you can get the position. And that's really unfair, because if we have a lot of young women representing us in politics, I think it would benefit the youth, especially.
Wow.
I think we don't have space at the main table, and that's a problem. And I think that's a part of the things that make the institutions and systems that currently exist problematic. The fact that tables need to be created outside for women, tables need to be created outside for the youth. So you'll see there'll be pre-conferences. Last week was the pre-youth conference for the BRICS Summit.
Wow.
So there's a lot of things that are being created for the marginalized outside where the power doesn't exist. So it's great. You remain in the periphery.
You're not the main.
It's great, but there is no power in those institutions, and that's a big problem. So I think we have the right people. Like, for instance, I'd point out two political people that say Nompendulo Mkhacha, who's with the ANC. Unfortunately, she's with the ANC, so there'll always be that, you know.
The views on politics that are expressed on this podcast are not of Soul City Institute for Social Justice.
But Nompendulo's doing the work. She's taking 66 kids to Cape Town for the netball World Cup. She's doing the work, you know. But there's also those nuances of, I'm doing the work, but I'm in the ANC. But is the work that I'm doing being pushed to the front, you know, the conversation of power again. And then there's Naledi Chirwa, who is exceptional. When you listen to her in Parliament, when she speaks on policy, but the place and the position and the power that she holds is ultimately what makes a difference. Because we can speak so eloquently, we can say things that are beautiful, people can say, wow, she sounds so nice, but that's all that it will be, and it's not enough for that to be it. You know, we need to be represented in the places that matter the most. And I think that's the biggest gap that exists within within women participating in politics.
I think for me, right, having an announcement of, the youngest member of parliament in Botswana, who's this incredible, I'm forgetting her name, but an incredible young black woman, or the youngest minister, the youngest whatever. Or if we look at, I don't know the statistics, and I'll make sure for our next episode when we go deeper into the subject, what is the median or average age of a politician or a government official? Not in South Africa, on the continent.
Yeah.
You know, there are countries that have presidents that don't live in their country, in this continent, that are always in another place. What does it mean to be that disconnected to your people? What does it mean where we have less than 50% of participation in politics on the continent, where women cannot get positions, you know? As we wrap up, there's a question from Ranas Majola, I think I'm saying that correctly, who again takes us back to a very important part of the protocol, sexual reproductive health and rights. And it's like, what does Maputo mean, and how about the stigma in association to abortion? How does it impact on the protocol? And I think we've answered this question, but you know, Runners is asking something that will always come up, you know, Fina, the protocol on sexual reproductive health.
Yeah, and how as a country, you know, we have facilities, and now we are talking about making facilities youth friendly, you know, and what does that mean, and how we still trying to remove the posters where illegal abortion is promoted, right? Which is good, because we don't want young people dying prematurely unnecessarily when a service is legalized and is provided for free. So the question we need to be asking, if we are saying reproductive health and rights, you know, is, are the young people accessing the reproductive health services? Why do they still find a market? Why do the illegal practitioners, abortion service providers, illegal ones, why do they still have such a huge market? What does it say about the reality of young women when they want to access these services? How do we strengthen that? Because services are there. Maybe there's an issue where we are not strengthening access. How do we define access? Is it saying, here's a clinic, go, it's friendly, go? Or is it making sure that when I enter that clinic as a young person, the questions that I will be asked, would not leave me feeling like, why did I even come here? You know, who I'm having sex with, how, where, whatever. Are those necessary? If I'm here and saying, I want to be responsible, I'm here to collect condoms because I don't want to have unprotected sex. Would I live with a condom and still go and do what I planned to do? Or would I live without a condom and still go and do what I planned? And then now I come back as a statistic. I'm a teenage pregnancy statistic, I'm an STI statistic, I'm an HIV statistic. I think, you know, where we balance rights and responsibilities is where we lack, because we are providing for the rights. Where young people are trying to take responsibility, we fall short as a system to meet them halfway, you know, and for me that's a big issue. That's where we need to be correcting, because the protocol is clear. It speaks of provisions. You know, you were saying progressive provisions, where we are saying, yes, if you made a mistake, you had unprotected sex because you did not plan to, and you don't want to keep that pregnancy, we should not judge you for saying, look, I'm not ready to be a parent. Can I just be, you know, provided this service? You know, that goes with the counseling that comes with it. Or would we return you and say, hey, when adoption is there, whatever. Now you are afraid to come back because even that clinic, your mother's friend works there. You know, so many issues where we speak responsibility, accessibility, all these things. Honestly, the protocol was trying to say, let's just get to a point where we say to women and girls, here's a service. If you choose to use it, this is what you should expect. It should not come with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know. It should just be provided. And then we go back to educating, because education for me is also very key. We don't want young people not having the knowledge, because knowledge for me is power, right? Once I'm informed, I make better decisions. But because we push education, and when they now come with that education, we deny them access. It also impacts on the education we are providing, because the decisions that they will make will go against the education we provided.
I know. Oh yes, Marcos and Velo.
Yes, and just to add, I think it's the comprehensive sexuality education not being implemented enough in schools, because I think when such conversations are normalized whilst teens are young, then at a later stage it will be better for them to like engage and like be able to go to facilities for this kinds of.
That's true. Comprehensive sexuality education is a hot potato as well, and it's tied into sexual reproductive health. And I know between the four of us we could go on for the next 5 hours. You know, this is an interesting conversation, and I'm so grateful to have both of you here, and as well as you, Fina, here to have this conversation. I want us to end on a positive note, right? What do you love most about being a young? We're all young here. We're under 100 years. Everyone here is under 100. So we're very young. What do you love the most about being a young African feminist? I think I'll start since I'm asking the question. Such a difficult question. But what I love the most about being a young African feminist is being alive at this moment, in this time right now. I think we are living in the most progressive Africa that we can live in, and I am excited, and I love the fact that I am at a moment where I can contribute to the future of a feminist Africa. That's what I love. Anyone else can go.
I love the inherent brilliantness we have as especially black women. We're just so brilliant. Like,
We really are.
just by being born, you know. I absolutely love it. Like, you have a bad day and you speak to a black woman and you're like, okay, maybe life's worth living. Like, all that knowledge in one human being. And I think that's because we do so much and we engaged with so many people. But I absolutely love our brilliance and our ability just to engage with knowledge. It's my favorite thing.
Awesome.
I love that as a youth of today, I have all the knowledge and I know the Maputo Protocol, I know laws, and I know that I have rights as a young woman protecting me so that I'm not violated.
Wow. Fina?
I will tell you next week.
Thank you so much to our guests. Thank you so much to everyone who tuned in. This is the first episode. This is our launch. Never seen before limited series on Maputo Protocol, what it means for today, what it means for tomorrow, and where it comes from. Please join us for the next following episodes as we unpack more and more. The podcast will be available on all platforms where you can find podcasts, and keep tuning into all our social media platforms and our website at Soul City Institute for Social Justice. Our website is www.soulcity.org.za, where you will know what's coming, when it's coming, and you'll be able to engage with us. We really loved interacting with all the people in our comment section. We love this conversation, and I think we have started it off on a big bang, you know. Thank you to our partners at Sunday World and all the other partners that have partnered with Soul City over the years. Please keep the comments rolling. We are still going to be listening, reading them and engaging. It will inform our next few episodes. So I think it's goodbye for now.
Goodbye.
Bye.